The series begins in the year 1993 with a young man named Harold, who is sitting in his house, reading a strange book with pictures in it. When night comes, suddenly he finds the doorbell ringing in Beirut. He tries to open the door, but he does not find anyone. When he enters the house, strange things happen and the electricity goes off and everything shakes around him and falls, and suddenly he finds the door. It knocks again and someone tries to open it, and out of fear, Harold runs and falls with the wax in his hand, leaving the whole house burning. He is ignited when he sees his book and all his belongings burning, and the fire comes out of the house in the form of a scary face, and the years pass until we reach the year 2023, specifically at Port Lawrence Secondary School, and everyone is gathered. Jim, they want to hear Isaiah, the captain of the soccer team, speak. When he finishes speaking, he throws the microphone away, and Isabella, who is filming the event for the school, runs to Isaiah, his girlfriend, Alice, and she attends. Then they go together to meet James, their classmate, and she writes at the time isn't their schoolmate having a Halloween party at her house tomorrow. This annoys her because this is the same as her party, and she feels that someone in the school is her destination. At this time, the school principal, like all the school principals, looks down on Isaiah, and they sit together in the office and realize that Isaiah is still under academic probation and will not be able to play on Friday with his team. So Isaiah is at home at that time and tells him that he has to play with his team because he might lose to someone else and he needs a scholarship. So they told Colin that if he passed the history test tomorrow, his probation would be lifted and he would play with his team normally, and this makes him more shocked because he is not studying or participating in history. And then we see a guy named Nathan, and he brought it. Workers are repairing Harold's house, which was burned, and we know that he will stay in it because he is close to Harold and inherited it from his family. They ask the person who worked for Ben if he knows what happened in the house. He tells Nathan that the lawyer told him what happened and that Harold died in the basement of the house and that his father and mother disappeared after that, and Nissan tries to open it. The door of the basement is forced by force, but it becomes swollen and bloody when it falls on the floor. It moves and goes towards the door. Suddenly the door opens as soon as it touches the blood. Then Isaiah arrives home and Bella is seen by his mother and father. They fight because of the expenses. He is very white and goes out and sits in front of the house alone. So she sees his business lawn and asks why he is distressed. But Isaiah Pinker denies that he is upset, so she gives his family while they fight, and he talks about playing football. So he tells Isaiah that he is finished as a player because the next match is important and he will not play in it unless he passes the history test tomorrow. So Margot wants to give him a gift and talk to him about his other qualities apart from football, and at this moment, he asks. Isaiah tells Margaret that she will help him tomorrow in the exam and let him cheat the answers from her, but Margaret refuses to do anything like this, and in the end, she is forced to agree because of Isaiah's insistence on her. On the second day of the exam, Isaiah cheats on the answers from Margaret, and when they finish the exam, Isaiah is still worried that he will not pass, but Margaret is reassured and knows he will get him. She is because all of her answers are correct, and it shows that she likes Izzy and loves him and is still offering him to go out together. At night, he said that his girlfriend comes and takes him from her, and she is upset because someone told her father and mother about the Halloween party that she will have at home while they are traveling, and they know that she is thinking about canceling the party, so he tells her Izzy she needs another place to throw the party and he will help. She will find him, and at night, Isaiah goes to Harold's house and is with Allison and James. He takes the key to the house from the secret place that his father put it in. He is certain that he learned from his father that the new king of the house will not live there until tomorrow. They still enter the house and begin to prepare for the party, Halloween. And then James is buying Isaiah's clothes, and they ask Alice what happened to Hard. So Isaiah tells her that he died in the fire, and suddenly the electricity was cut off. So Isaiah tells them that the electrical switches must have been faulty, and they go together to look for its place to fix it, and Bella finds that the basement door is open and suddenly it connects. Margaret becomes surprised by Allison's presence, so she gives Ozzy to invite her to the party, and this makes Allison upset. Margaret sees the matter and tells them that the electrical box is definitely in the basement, but he needs someone to go down with him. James and Allison are afraid and refuse, except Margaret agrees, and they know that she is not afraid and can go down with him, but he refuses because he will be upset by their presence alone together in the basement, and he goes down alone, and then he finds a strange persuasion that takes advantage of the presence of an old camera that takes out pictures at that time. At this time, he closes the door to the basement, so she starts to shake the ice and asks James to open it and stop his ridiculous visit, but James swears because he didn't lock the door. Then Izzy opens the door and takes it and starts filming them with the camera he found. Same moment, the electricity turns back on, and this makes Izzy surprised because he didn't find the basement or the electrical box. After a while, everyone arrives in the Halloween party begins, and Margaret is sitting alone, and her colleagues come and sit with her at this time. Alyssa is sitting and arguing with Izzy because she came to the party, and this is because she is jealous of her and knows that she likes Izzy, and asks him not to talk to her again, but Izzy refuses because she went to his neighbor, and then she hears a fight and Izzy goes and she knows that she is leaving because she is not welcome at the party and she is upset with him because he was disappointed in Allison. He forced her and put her in a situation like this. Suddenly, Nathan arrives home and threatens everyone that he will call the police if he doesn't leave his house right away. So everyone runs away before Nathan calls the police. While Allison is running with Toph in the woods, she sees Harold in front of her, so she becomes afraid and is kidnapped when he starts to run in front of her, and along with her, Izzy was sad, so he ran around looking for her until he reached her and helped. The next morning at school, Izzy was sitting with James and was making sure that Alice was fine. She told him that a silly student had played a prank on her, and she was afraid. At this time, Nissan came to school and hacked at Izzy with a loud voice, and at that time, James is mesmerized by Izzy, and Nathan introduces him to him, and he leaves and walks to Beirut. Nathan to Lisa, and in my hand is his bag that he forgot yesterday at his house while he was running away, so Izzy thanked him very much, especially since the road from his house to school is long, so he preferred the new English language, and I asked him not to come with his friends to his house again while he was in. On the other hand, he will not complain to his family about what happened. When Nathan walks away, Izzy opens his bag and unpacks the pictures he took of Allison and Margaret with the camera of her at Nissan's house, but the pictures will be strange, and Allison and Margaret will look like they are dying in the pictures. At this time, Margaret will be at the fast food and drinks machine and take a biscuit from her, but she finds a person is standing far away and looking at her, but she does not move, and suddenly he disappears in the middle of the students. As soon as she eats the biscuits, she chokes because she suffers from an almond allergy. Reaches Izzy at that time and takes out her bag from her bag, holding her syringe in her hands and holding it in her hands. He looks at the picture he found in the bag and writes that the shape of Margaret in the picture happened in reality. He then goes to James to tell him what happened, and he tells him that the camera she has in Harold's house is haunted and the pictures are pure, but the surprise is that it is white and there is nothing in it, so James took the camera from him and they are filming, and this upsets Izzy, but James tells him that there is no such thing as a haunted camera and leaves. As he walks, when Izzy sees his picture, he is shocked. He keeps looking at it all day long and is afraid because there appears in the picture a broken armor in the match he is playing. And the first time he sees Margaret, he goes to her to show her the picture and the camera, but the picture is still white and no one can see what is in it except him, so Margaret starts knocking because he thinks he is coming to check on her, and at night, Izzy decides to get rid of the camera, break it, and burn it, but on the day of the match, when he opens his safe in the locker room, he is shocked to find the camera is there and completely intact. At the time of the match, Izzy is afraid and very nervous, and he is shaking while he is burning on the field, and the entire stadium is burning around him, and he tries to ignore everything. He plays, but the fantasies do not end, and Izzy falls and his hand is broken as he saw in the picture that came out of the camera. The hospital, Izzy collapses when he learns that his treatment period will take 8 months because he will lose his academic studies. So he tells his father that he will try to pay his university fees if the scholarship is lost, and at this time, Nora, their neighbor, tells Bess the reason for her presence here, so she tells him. And she is afraid that Harold will come back again and soon take revenge on them all for what they did to him. He will be in the house at the time, and he hears the sound of the door opening, and suddenly he finds Harold burning in front of him, and his smoke entering inside him, covering Nathan's body, and then we go back in time to a day. It's a Halloween party in the morning, and we see Isabella being a winner among the students at school, alone and having no friends, and no one listens to her or cares about her. When Allison makes a mistake about it, she gets upset and makes mistakes, and this upsets Isabella very much. She decides to take revenge on Allison and sends a message to her family to tell them about the Halloween party that she will have at home while traveling, and at night, she knows that Allison found another place for the party, which is Harold's house, and what her little brother is going to do. She goes to the party and gets happy, so she gets wet in her costume. She goes to the party, and as usual, no one cares about her. Suddenly, she hears a voice speaking to her, coming from the basement, so she starts to walk behind the voice until she reaches the mask, and the mask asks her to. She wears it so that people can see her and raise a warning about her. So she will go back to the party again, but at that time, everything changes and everyone present is concerned about her. For the first time, when the party ends and she returns home, she tries to remove the mask with difficulty as if it was stuck to her face, and she is very happy because she was happy at the party and everyone was interested in her and dancing with her, and at the present time, Isaiah has left the hospital and is trying to call James, but he does not answer him, so she sends him a voice message. And she comes at that time to visit him and check on him, and she apologizes to him for the last time she spoke to him. when he was telling her about the pictures and the camera, and she asks him to explain to her what is happening to him. But Isaiah tells her that she should stay away from this topic because he doesn't want her to get hurt. This time, Nissen wakes up and Bella finds himself sleeping on the floor and his body is aching and not in its normal state. When he looks at his mobile phone, he is shocked since today is Monday because he has been sleeping like this since Friday, so he has his jacket and goes quickly to school, but he falls while he is walking. And he feels like he can't walk and someone is controlling him and taking advantage of him a lot, and he feels sick because of what is happening to him, so he uses the bathroom to stay away from the students until he calms down, but he is terrified when he sees Harold appearing in the mirror, talking to him and asking for help, and suddenly Nissan disappears and Harold takes his place, and Bessie flies to him, and then he goes to Izzy, not Isabella, and asks if she is the one filming the matches because he needs a picture of the match on Friday, specifically the footage where he fell and his hand was broken, so Isabella was surprised that he wanted to see something like this and take him with her to the place where she put all the things, the one who photographed her and left alone to watch the footage he wanted, so Isaiah thanked her at this time for helping him, and when she came back, she found her colleague Lucas standing on the pictures of the building and wanted to hold her camera without a pilot, and he actually grabbed it and fell on the ground, and then he went to Colin, the manager, in his office and tried to apologize to Isabel about what he did, and he knows that he did not know that the plane was hers. This moment, Isabella hears the mask talking to her and telling her that Lucas is a liar and that he intended to do that to her specifically, so she becomes upset and fights with Lucas, and then she talks to Colin and tells him that he is a weak person and does not know how to control the students' mistakes. Suddenly she comes out of the state of anger she was in, apologizes for what she said, leaves the place, and walks away, and when she returns home she fights with her mother because of what happened, and she learns that the plane belongs to her father, and it is a mistake that he thought that she would be responsible and protect her, and he decides to track her down and prevent her from going out, the internet, and her mobile phone. And she takes from Isabella her mobile phone and laptop. She puts her in a drawer and locks the drawer with the key, and everyone who lights it goes to her cafe and talks to him about her son Lucas and what he did. And we find out that there is a romantic relationship between them. This time, Dia is in the dressing room, and Bella sees Nathan talking to him, but he notices that he has changed, and this is because Harold is possessing him and he is still. His body is talking to Isaiah about his father and that he used to play on the same team when he was a year old. Isaiah says with surprise how did he know something like this, so they tell Harold that he knows many things about his students. Then Harold goes to Nora's cafe and she talks to him on the basis that he is Nathan, and when she learns that he lives in Harold's house is very crowded, and she asks him if the house is really haunted as they say, and suddenly she finds him disappearing in front of her and appearing behind her and following his requests and walking away, and at night Nora talks to Isaiah, but Ben comes and asks his son to enter the house and brings Nora, and she talks to Isaiah about whatever she is thinking about, because ghosts don't exist and no one sees his son during the match. He leaves and walks, so he saw Nora's light at that time, so she came has a picture of Harold to deliver to Lisa and asks her to ask him if he saw this boy before, so she loves Lisa because he hides the picture. And then he is shocked and tells her that what is in this picture is a reason, everything that happened to him, and then Isabella finds out that her brother told her that the video of Lucas breaking her plane is spread on the social networking site, and so she is able to put it to their father to prove that she was not the one who broke it, and then she puts on the rubbish mask and goes to Lucas and beats him violently and becomes very strong because of the mask suddenly turns into a scary monster, but at this time Isaiah and Marge arrive with a group of her in her hands, so she starts running and evading them. They go to Lucas to help them, afraid of what happened. At this time, he hears strange noises in the house and walks behind the source of the sound. He finds the monster in the house and breaks everything and calls Ella no to help him, but he is shocked when he finds her mobile phone with the monster, so he says her name in fear, and at this moment he knows that the monster is Isabella, so he runs and uses it, but she finds him and attacks him, and at this time he prefers to retreat so that she does not hurt him, so she rises above what she is in and tries to remove the mask that she is wearing. Controls her and calms her brother down, and he is reassured so that he is not afraid of her. When the day comes, Isabella decides that she will throw away the mask during the day so that she can get rid of it and not let it fall into the hands of anyone else. But Harold will be there and see what happened. And then Victoria, Isabella's mother, will be gathered with Ben and Nora at the house of Eliza, James' mother, because he warns her to talk to anyone about Harold and the ghost who wants to take revenge on them and their children, but Nora is adamant in her words. And at the same time, Isabella is sitting with James until her mother finishes her seat with his mother, and when she comes to play billiards with him, James explodes in her face, and we go back in time to one day at the Halloween party when James, Allison, and Margaret were trying to open the door of the basement in the ISO. James fell on the ground and his head hit the wall. The party begins and James feels bored, and when he decides to leave the house, he finds himself and comes back again to the time when his head hit, so he goes home and takes advantage and tells his friends that he was now at the party. But his friends are surprised by his words because the party has not yet begun, and James keeps trying more than once to leave the house, but he comes back the next time, not hitting his head in embarrassment, and he understands that he is stuck in a time loop, and he does not understand the reason, and he cannot get out of it, and an idea comes to him to get him out of the time loop. That is, he stops the clock, and in fact, when he thinks about leaving the house with his friend Sam, his plan succeeds, and the next day in the morning he wakes up and prepares breakfast, and suddenly he finds many copies of himself in front of him. They talk to him and tell him that every time he tried to escape from the time loop, he made a copy of himself. James was afraid and he was trying. He escapes from them, but the copies keep coming. And it comes to me that they have locked James in it and taken his place. And each copy is in a different place at the same time. At the present time, Isabella is collapsed due to James exploding in front of her, and the people come to the sound of his screams, and the first time she tells them that James exploded, he appears again in front of her and treats her as if she is lying. She is not conscious, and he did not explode or anything, and he was joking with her, so Isabella tells everyone that he is a liar and that her appearance does not suggest that he had visited, but unfortunately no one believes her, and she takes her mother nervously and they walk away, and when Isabella is in her room, she sees James from the window, standing in front of her house, and the next day, Isaiah and Margaret are sitting. They talk to each other about the camera and what is happening, and they decide to go to school to talk to James, but they find that he is different and treats them in a strange way and begins to insult each one of them. Suddenly, they find Isabella with a bat, and she hits James with it, and it works. They see it at that time, and they become very afraid. And she tries to melt it. She guides them, and they know that this is not the real James, and they must sit down. They get together and talk. And when they sit together, Isabella tells them that James is not real, as if he is a second copy of himself, and that she found a strange mask that when she wears it, it controls her and tries to make her look like a monster. Margot smiles and finds out where this mask is, so she tells her that she found it at Harold's house on the day of the Halloween party. Isaiah is surprised and tells them that it is him. He also found the camera in Harold's house, so Margaret understood at that time that all of this was connected, and they went together to Nora so that she could tell them everything about Harold, but she refused to speak and seemed afraid, so they kept preventing her from talking to them about this matter. So Margaret said that her mother Sarah knew everything, and at this time James was trying. He finds a way out in the place where he is imprisoned so that he can escape from it, and Isaiah, Margaret, and Isabella are watching the copy of James who is in his house, and they walk behind it and watch until they find him going to an abandoned place. And when they enter after him, they discover that the copy saw them and set a trap for them, but at this moment the real James appears and binds him to his friends to leave the place with him because he discovered a way out that they could escape from, and suddenly a copy of James comes and tells them that there is no real James among them. So, who is the real James? Walked with him to make sure that he exploded. They kidnap him copies of James at that time, and he is in love with the real James, and then he arrives. Margaret and Isabella go to their place to escape, but suddenly they are slandered again and copies of James the hands and the real James appear, so they decide to attack him and blow her up. They enter into a violent conflict together that ends with them being able to destroy all the copies of James. Then they go to sit in a cafe. Margot starts calling her mother to find out who Harold is, so her mother smiles when she hears the name and asks her not to talk to anyone about Harold until she comes, and at night we learn that Harold took the mask and a copy of James goes to him. She is able to escape and he has a box with him in his hand, but when Harold opens it, he finds it empty, so he is in it and thinking about James' copy, and the next day Lucas is thinking about his father and wants he continues his career in extreme bike racing, and Bella finds an eye in his bag, so he grabs it and is surprised. He then sees his mother and Colleen in the car, and he understands that there is a romantic relationship between them, so he is upset. He becomes very upset and then goes to the cafe and sees his mother and talks to her about his father sadly, and he realizes that he knows that his father is not her monster. I became surprised by his manner and his words, and when Lucas goes to school, he sees Harold in the body of Nathan, who is in Lucas's bag, and he tries to take it from him, but Lucas refuses and leaves and walks, and then Lucas goes to Mart and asks her to come with him to his house because he wants to show her something that belongs to them both. And when Margaret goes, he has a beret. The recordings of the surveillance cameras in front of the house showed Colin, her father, and his mother, Nora, being with each other and interacting with each other in love and being attached to each other, so Margaret was shocked by what she saw, and then Lucas tried to calm her down, changing the subject and talking to her about the worms that he found in Harold's house on the day of the Halloween party. He told her that he had taken them and decided to raise them, so she became Margaret is disgusted with him. And suddenly a worm enters Lucas's nostrils, and Margaret is afraid for him, but he reassures that he is fine. Then Lucas brings Margaret home, and she finds Izzy waiting at home to tell her father about what happened with them, but she tells Izzy that she does not tell her father anything because she cannot trust him now, so I find Izzy a surprise. From her words, at night, all the worms come out of the box that Lucas put them in and near him, and they enter from his nostrils into his body, and the next day in the morning, they are surprised at their place, and when he goes down, he is upset by the food, and his stomach hurts, so he opens the garbage to eat from it, and when he goes to school, he falls from the stairs while going down, and when it closes, the safe is in his hands. He finds a rubber bone, and he is not affected. Margaret comes at this time and says hello to him and waits if he is fine. Lucas becomes strange in a way that makes Margaret surprised by him. Then Margaret goes to her friends and he kills Ezia. They tell the truth what happened, and this is because in the woods she saw a strange person and thought it was a prank. And it could be a prank. The person she saw had something to do with what was happening to them, but Margaret refused because she didn't want anyone else to know anything. Suddenly, Elyson interjected on them because Isaiah had called her and asked that she sit with them, so she was hoping for Margaret not to say anything, and this was very upsetting to Elyson, and she wondered why Margaret was controlling her lover and leaving his mother. She walks and is angry in Beirut and sees Izia, and he tries to guide her. He learns that Margaret helped him in the history exam and considers him a loyal friend, but Allison is sure that Margaret loves Izia. Then Allison goes to Colin, the director, and asks him to talk to him. They learn that his daughter cheated on Izia in the history exam, and Izia returns to his friends and they ask if they saw Les because he noticed that his behavior was strange, and yesterday his stomach was hurting, so Margaret loves them. Lucas ate one of the worms that he found in Harold's house. So she becomes, and at this moment Colin's hand is on Margaret, and when she goes to his office he talks to her in his capacity as the school principal, not her father, and he knew that she was a cheater. Isaiah is in the history exam, so she is very upset and tells him that he does not have the right to hold her accountable because he is also a cheater, and is afraid that this time Lucas will be on the roof of the school riding his motorcycle, and he will walk with it, and he will fall on top of Colleen's car, and he will suck whole a lot of what happened, and Lucas will talk to him defiantly, and they will know that he knows with his relationship with his mother, and he leaves and walks away. She loves and talks to him, but Lucas is a stranger and his body is pure and worms are walking in it under his skin, and he walks and leaves because he has another challenge called the Summit of Doom. After that, she goes to Nora and tells her what is happening with her son Lucas, and that the last thing he said to her is that he has a challenge called the Summit of Doom. So she tells her Nora says that this is the place where his father died, and they ride in the car together to catch up with him, and when they arrive, Nora tries to prevent Lucas from carrying out his challenge and tells him the truth about his father's death, that he committed suicide and that there was no accident at the time of the race, as everyone understands. At that time, Lucas shows the shock, and suddenly all the worms that entered come back his body and then bring Nora and try to guide him and console him. At this moment, the worms take shape in the form of a huge and terrifying monster, and Lucas rides his motorcycle and runs away. Nora runs away, and I came back in the car, and also but the monster follows me. It is deserted and they go down to hide in it, but the monster is able to attack the place and enter it, and it is empty. Lucas tried to turn it on and write to Nora and Margaret. There is a cutting machine in the factory, so they turn it on, and Lucas the monster lies to her, and the monster actually enters the inside of the cutter and is able to destroy it, and then the police come and Nora is alone and decides that she is telling the policemen the truth, but they do not believe them, and they enter the insane asylum, and Victoria is responsible for her, and she confirms to the policemen that Nora is crazy and must be treated, and then it will be Harold is in Nathan's body in the abandoned factory, and Bella is in the eyes of the one who was with Carlos, and he is taking him the hospital. Nora imagines Harold in front of her and burning while he tells her that he wants to go back to what he left, and she kisses Colleen and Marge Lucas at their house to stay with them until Nora comes out of the hospital and Toro Margaret Lucas the room where he will sit, and he knows that he is happy because he will sit with him and her side, and the two of them will show that they like each other. Then Sarah brings his mother Margaret home, and they all sit down to have dinner together, and she learns that her father left the trip and got up to drink so she could talk to her mother about Harold. But her mother refuses to talk now and knows that something is wrong. It is an important task that you must do first, and then Margaret will go out with Lucas, and she will be upset with her mother because her words are always vague and she does not explain anything to her, and you do not know anything about her, so Luke will guide her and make it easy for her and tell her that she is a wonderful person and she loves his words very much. This time, Izzy is sitting with James and saying he told him that he had broken up with Allison, so James was very upset because he did not love Allison. Isabella arrived at that time and was surprised that Margaret had not yet arrived. Had an important meeting together, and after a while, Margaret and Maha Lucas arrived and told them in frustration that her mother had not told her anything yet. Everyone was very surprised, especially since her mother warned them not to talk to anyone about anything. The next day in the morning, Sarah goes to Nora in the hospital and sits and talks to her and asks why she was admitted to the hospital. She gives music to their children from him, but no one believes her and thinks she is crazy. Sarah goes to Victoria in her office and fights with her because of what she is doing with Nora. She tells her that Nora is a danger to herself, but Sarah tells her that Nora saw Harold and she is definitely not lying. Victoria loves that Nora will destroy their lives and make them lose everything. His time at school, Harold, who is in Nathan's body, takes him to his study lawn and he tells her that he met her in the basement and there are pictures in it to her mother. When he walks, she opens a bookcase and sees pictures of her mother and writes that Harold was a classmate of her mother and the rest of her friends' families at school, especially her mother, who was her best friend. Then she goes to her friends and tells them that she discovered that Harold was a friend of her mother and their families, and all of this is mentioned in his diary. And the diary is very strange because it is the first. She doesn't read it. She sees everything repeating before her eyes again. But her friends warn that this is very dangerous and that studying can hurt her, but Marge insists on reading the diaries in order to reach the truth, and she sees in front of her a memory of her mother standing, talking to Harold, and fighting with him because Marge brought her in, and she leaves and walks away, and suddenly he looks at a woman talking to her, and he knows he won't let her get lost from him like her mother, and he takes with him home what happened on the night of the fire, even though there were people hiding in the house that day, and they are the reason for what happened to him. At the same time, Isaiah and the others notice that Margot's eyes are strange and scary, and she is fixed and does not move, and the diary in her hands is moving. She is alone, so they prefer to go to Harold's house, and in fact, they are able to wake her up as soon as they reach the house, and she tells them about what she saw, and suddenly they find themselves all seeing the memory of that day, and they know that the hidden people are their families, so the house is in great shock at that time, and they understand that their families were killed. But I hope she feels that something is missing. And the matter is certain. It didn't end like that, and suddenly they find Harold in front of them in April's body, and he asks them to enter the house, and he tells them everything. Sarah is sitting with Colin at that time, and she is confronted with his betrayal of her with Noah. He tells her that she traveled and was away from him for 3 months and decided that she would choose her life and stay away from him and Margot. So Sarah tells him that she is unable to live in this place, and he asks Colin why, but Sarah refuses to tell him and leaves and goes to his car while he cries and comes back again to Nora in the hospital and fights with her because she cheated on her with her husband. However, she decides to protect her from Victoria, and she knows that she is giving her medicine because she is tired and she must try not to take any of the medicine. At that time, Margot and her friends will be at Harold's house and sitting with Nathan so that he can tell them the truth as he told them. And he begins to tell them that all of this began with his grandfather, Ephraim, in the year 1925. We go back in time to this time and we learn that Ephraim was working as a magician, but he was a failure. His shows were boring, and they were trying to buy something new. A different woman helps him in his performances. He buys a bride named Salabi, and then she plays his wife. She is very upset because they need the money. Ephraim shows Salabi a piece of paper with strange words written on it. As soon as he reads the paper, Salabi moves, and after that, Ephraim takes Salabi with him to all of his performances. And one time the audience sits and enjoys Ephraim on his show. Suddenly he finds Ephraim Slappy speaking, and at that time he is very afraid of him. Audience says that the bride is talking alone, but at that time the audience keeps laughing and thinks that all of this is part of the show. At this time, Ephraim asks Ephraim to trust him and make him the most famous magician. Indeed, years will pass and Ephraim will be very famous. People would go to him specifically to attend his performances with Slappy, but he was neglecting his family and would not stay with them. In the year 1960, Ephraim's manager decided to cancel Slappy's shows, and at that time, Slappy became annoyed with him and burned to him, and he learned to say a magic spell that would make his manager freeze and die in his place, and he would bury Ovens in a secret coffin. And right at that time, Slappy's evil is increasing and he wants to cast a second spell to burn down the stage, but Oven refuses and takes pictures of Slappy, and they read his bag again. He travels after that and buys a big house to sit in and puts a basement and a big hole in it to bury the bag in which Slappy put it because he doesn't want anyone else to arrive. He is hurt because of him, and in the year 1993, Barry and Georgia, Harold's family, receive the house from the lawyer because Georgia remains Ephraim's granddaughter, and they inherited the house from him. When Harold looks at the house, he is very impressed with everything in it, and he sees the masks that the Ovens were assembling, and when he goes down the hall with his mother, he hears a voice coming from the room and talking again. One morning, Harold does not want to go to his school because he is always being bullied, so he comes out with a new camera in my hand as a gift to take pictures of his memories with it. When Harold goes to school, he sees Noah and Sarah, and he likes Sarah very much. He begins to teach her how to take pictures with a camera and get pictures out of it. After a while, Dad asks him about Sarah, but he is sad and he tells him that Sarah does not love him as much as he loves her, and then Harold hears the second voice coming from the closet, so he guides her and sees what is inside her, and Bella is in the bag that contains Slappy, so he takes him out, and Pyrrha is for his father and mother, and he is very happy, and he sees with Slappy the same paper that Avram read, so he reads it. He also has a loud voice and goes with him to school to participate in theatrical performances with him, and when his classmate makes fun of him, he talks to Harold alone, and at that time Harold becomes very afraid and tells everyone that the bride speaks alone. But everyone stands up for him and thinks that this is part of the show, and Sarah stands up for Hart, and she is very happy with him, and this makes him happy. So Salab says that if he trusts him and follows him, he will make him an important person and everyone will love him. After a while, Nora sees Harold by chance talking to Salab, so she becomes upset and goes to Sarah to tell her about what she saw. Sarah loves to guide her and learns that Harold must have been rehearsing for a show he was going to do, and then Harold would leave the house. In his father's house, his father and mother stopped to take my clothes from him, and they found out that they heard him late at night talking to the bride, and she kept taking it from him all the time, but Harold collapsed and became angry, and then his father was forced to take my clothes from him by force and a little. And they told George that they were burning my clothes, but they were shocked when they found it was not burned, and Harold came at this time. When Benner sees Slappy talking to him and hears Slappy talking to him, he asks him to use the spell that he taught him, and he says it angrily at his father and mother, so he freezes in their place, and they try to go to the brides. Then he goes to school and performs his theatrical performance, and then Slappy exposes Sarah's secrets, along with Victoria and the rest of their friends, so the director stops the show, and Sarah becomes upset with Harold because he revealed the secrets. What she told him about her and her friends is for each of them at this time, but she tells them that Harold is in danger because 2 days ago he asked her to help him and he was afraid and terrified, and she tells Nora that she saw the bride Slappy talking to Harold before, so they all decided that they would save Harold from Slappy and protect him, and at night they would leave. They enter the house one by one without him seeing them, and Ben goes to the door to take Slappy from him. But he is shocked when he finds Slappy talking to him, and the whole house suddenly shakes, and everything in it breaks, so he smells Slappy in the bag and runs away. But he and the rest of his friends try to save Harold, but he does not want to open it for them. The door of the basement, and he fell from the stairs with candles and burned the house, so Ben took Ben out of the house with his friends, and suddenly Slappy was talking to them, so they caught Ben, and he was breaking and locking the bag on him, and they were thinking of a place to bury Slappy so that it would not fall into the hands of anyone else, and they would think that everything that had happened would remain a secret between them, because if they reached someone, they could be imprisoned because of Harold's death, and no one would believe them. At the present time, Sarah is waiting that their family was not killed, as they understood, and that they were helping Harold from the evil bride. Harold's nerve house, while he was in a body, attacked them and told them that their family was killed, and they broke into Harold's house and caused his death. Also stole his best friend from him. They were surprised at that time by his defense of Harold and his collapse because of it. Harold decided to inform them that Nathan was not there now because he was possessed by him and appeared to them in his appearance. They were very afraid at that time and tried to escape, but they found the house not on the ground and flying in the darkness, and they could not see anything, so he stayed inside Harold's diary. And then they hear the voice of someone approaching them, so they grab anything in front of them to protect themselves with it, and right at that time that it is Nathan, so he tries to guide them and swears to them that it is the real Nathan, not Harold, and he is locked up like him, and he tells them about the day when Harold took control of his body and controlled it, and he sits with them and says they told them that unfortunately there's no way out in the diary, and he tries a lot to get out, but he does not know, and at this time the trash girl notices that there's a white light outside the door and decides to let her friends tie her to the curtains of the house as if it were a rope so that she can go down to this light because it might be a way out for them. But when Isabella arrives to the source of light, she finds the school and sees Harold's safe open, and suddenly she finds in front of her the stage and the audience, human beings transformed into dolls, so she becomes frightened and goes back to the rope so that her friends can lift her. But Harold at that time is driving the car in a bad shape, carrying his diary and cutting out the school page from it, and at this moment Isabella feels that everything around her is being destroyed and her friends are appreciating it. After the trouble of being withdrawn and brought back to them on the second day, Nora treated Victoria with the medication that was given to her to make her labor, so she decided to push Victoria away from herself and tell her that she is doing this to protect her and them. After that, Nora walks from the hospital, but in the elevator she meets Nathan, and he makes her look at his reflection in the mirror, so she becomes friendly. Not Nathan. She comes out of the elevator and tries to escape from it. She goes to the place where Slappy is hiding, and Colin enters her at this time. She starts talking to him, takes the bag that contains Slappy, and walks away. When Ben visits Colin, he tells him that Nora went out and took a bag with a toy doll in it, and she walked quickly, so I was shocked at the moment when he got up. He walks and goes with Eliza to the place where Slappy was burying, but Ben meets there a copy of James who is trapped in the place he is in, and then he goes to Eliza and grabs a piece of wood and hits her with it, but Ben is able to escape and protect her from the copy of James, and when Eliza hits the copy, it explodes, making him come back again, and at the same time this is when Nissan discovers that the pen is returning to his body again, and he asks someone to hit him to make sure, but Isabel curses him, and then he returns to his body for a few seconds and tells them that he saw his car and his sigh. This broke the fast in Harold's memoirs. They all planned to beat Nathan until he returned to his body, and indeed they succeed, and Nathan returns to his body and will be driving his car, but she at that time, Nora and Bella stand in front of him and he calls her to her, but she does not hear him. When he comes to start the car, he finds that it does not start, and suddenly she starts to shake, and Harold controls him again and makes him hit himself. Then he comes to Annie and her friends and tells them that he saw Nora. It's clear that Harold is following me again, and when he comes back, he tries to kill me. He opens Harold's diary, but Harold stops him and throws the diary into a pool of water. At that moment, Margaret and her friends find the house drowning because they are trapped inside Harold's diary. What? A person gets out of the car to catch up on the studies before they are all wet. Harold prevents him, paralyzes his movement, and controls him, but Nissan is able, in the end, to catch up on the diary. He tries with all his might to draw a door in the diary so that it will be a way out for Margaret and her friends. At that time, Margaret and her friends are in the basement of Harold's house, and on this anniversary they see Harold's family in front of them, and they ask them that if they see him, they would tell him that they love them and forgive them, and they will see at this moment the door that they had drawn in April, so they used it to get out of the diary. Each one of them returns to his second body and escapes from Harold's house, but Harold is able to take possession of Nathan's second body and lock him back in the house. At this time, Nora arrives at the hut in which Slappy will be buried, and at that time, he beats her shorts on her to warn her of the snowstorm, but he sees the bag and his hand is out of it, so I have no doubt about it. Nora asks her to open the bag, so she opens up and tells him that the bride needs repairs, so he goes out, and then Harold, who is in the Nissan's body, passes a policeman's violin and is standing in the same police station that Nora was with, and tells him that he was walking after Habib in the car, but they separated because of the storm, and I have Nora's specifications for him to show him if he sees her, and in fact, in my hand, he gives him the address of the hut that Nora is sitting in, but he prevents him from crossing because of the storm. So I walk, and he is angry, and he is walking from another road. At the same time, Lux is with his friends in James' car so that he can go to his mother and protect her before Harold reaches her, and on the way they see them, and Nissan car is in the middle of the snow, and Lucas and Unnahar get out and are afraid for his mother, and they are checking on her everywhere. At the same time, Harold arrives at Nora with their hands on her in her car and asks her to give him Slappy, but she refuses and tells him that Slappy is evil and is affecting him. She tries to run and escape from him, and Nora hears a voice. Lucas leans on her, but she discovers that Harold was laughing at her to hold her, and then he takes the bag from her and throws it in the snow and takes out Slappy from the bag, and at the peak of his happiness, Ben arrives with Eliza and Sarah, leaving Isabella and James standing alone. And they learn from them that Isaiah, Lucas, and Margaret were looking for Nora, and suddenly he went home. Isaiah is from Margaret, and Lucas and Pizza are from the top of the mountain, and he keeps holding on to a tree trunk so he doesn't fall. This moment Lucas reaches Nora, and Bella finds her crying and broken down because of him, and she asks him to forgive her because she didn't want him to get hurt because of her, and he moves, and then they look for Isaiah, and he breaks up Slappy and Harold with him, and they kill him. So Nora stays with Harold, and you know that he is a good person and not evil, and the bride is negligent towards him and controls him, and he takes care of all the rest, and they are afraid for Isaiah, and they try to beg Harold to retract what he is about to do, and Margaret tells him that she saw his family and they said that they are forgiving, and at this moment Harold is affected by their words, and he goes to Lisa and saves him and catches him, Slappy, and he throws him off the mountain, and then a resemblance of Harold emerges from Nathan's body, and he looks at his friends and Sarah with love, and at that time he sees his family. Beirut is theirs, and they hug, and Ben and his friends thank Nora for helping them and finally getting rid of Slappy's evil. After that, Nissan returns home and reads about what happened, and sends the novel to the head of the publishing house when it is finished, the one to whom the novel will be published, but she calls him after she reads it and tells him that she wants it to change and be strange and unexpected, and she begins to tempt that if he can change the ending, he will be the most famous writer of the current era and will be more successful than the famous novelist Stephen King, and the topic is tempting April at that time, and he prefers to sit for 2 full hours because he changes in the end. But the madness of fame and greed for money makes him go to the place where they threw Slappy and take it. He returns home and takes out the paper he has with him and reads At that time, he fixes Slappy alone and talks to him, and they find out that he knew why he returned to him again, because he needs a strong ending. And he will help him with this, and suddenly he finds Pepe. His sick dog came back to life a second ago and runs from him to the woods, so he runs after her, and as she grows older, he digs in the hole where she is standing, and suddenly she turns into a ferocious and terrifying dog. Nathan returns home with a coffin containing a dead body, and Slappy asks him to take the paper inside the coffin and read what is on it out loud, so he shows what a fate. Nissen asked for it, and suddenly the body inside the coffin woke up and became that of a young man from the ancient era named Kando. He comes at this moment, so Kando remains his. They try to inanimate objects and reconcile. We go back in time to the year 1879. At that time, Kando Gundy was participating in the war and was seriously wounded by the enemy. He entered a place where he hid and found a wall with words on it. It was strange, and he sat reading it, and suddenly he found that his wound had completely disappeared. In the year 1885, Kando went to New York and entered a place where there was a carnival in which dolls were being made up. The owner of the place was named France, and who first knew that the one in front of him was Kando, the famous magician. He was very happy and spoke to Kando about his failure in the carnival, and he offered to help him in return. He helps him with a specific need. After a year, France discovered that Kando was trying to puppet people in order to carry out the process of burning the tower. He was very frightened and felt that he had made a big mistake and decided to make you a bride as a gift. He found out that he called her Slappy. Suddenly, Kando discovered that France wanted to read his incantation to him in order to turn him into his bride, so he attacked him. He stabbed him with the dagger, but the spell had been executed, and Kando's soul came out of his body and inhabited Slappy's body. Kando takes him on a trip into his memories, wondering what happened to him during the war and how did he turn into the greatest magician. This is because of the spell he found in the temple in which he hid, and all the spells present in this place fulfill any curse, and he is embarrassed. He carries out everything in the spell, including the tower, which is the sacrifice of a soul for the common good, because after that there will be no more wars, and Fifi, though, kills them, but Nathan is able to protect her and kills. And he is very remorseful for what he did, and he tells them about his greed for fame and money. And they know that he was the first one in his family. He made a deal with Kendo. It was France, but he turned against him and used his magic against him. In April, the spell that Kando woke up with was used, and he goes to wake up France with it. He calls Kando at that time, but France apologizes to him for betraying him a long time ago and helps him burn the bodies in the tower, and at this time, he turns Kando into the bride. We discover that this was a plan from Nissen, but the magic does not work on Kando, and he returns to his normal form again and completes the burning of the tower. She tries to hope that at this time she finds the spell that stopped Kando and imprisons him, and she reads out loud that Beer turns Kando into another soldier and shows all the soldiers who were in the war and kills him when he tries. He kills Margit. The shot in Izzy comes and he is trying to protect her. After that, everyone is in the hospital and waiting for Izzy to come out of the operating room, but the doctor informs me that Izzy is not alive and will die, so Margit comes in and talks to him and tells him that she loves him and cannot live without him and is ready to do anything for him, and he is still with her. Kando's spell book, and she reads the spell to Isaiah. And when she wakes up, Nissen is in the bathroom and he sees Kando's appearance in the mirrors, and we learn that Kando has taken over Nissen's body, and the series ends.